Mama didn't raise no fool, and fool, you grown. This is a public service announcement, and its intended audience is for anyone who has been designated as a non-essential person or non-essential entity in a pandemic health crisis, for whom the utopian ideal of a classless society may have been interrupted by a bit of cognitive dissonance upon this declaration of indefinite status until the public health crisis has been finally resolved. This is a public service announcement. Masks save lives. If you have not heard this simple statement of public health guidance in a pandemic crisis repeatedly by now, you may be living on some planet other than planet Earth. But as we learn in the study of mass communication theory, the way that we hear a message transmitted from any person is always subject to our interpretation of what exactly that message means and is intended to do. And the message transmitted is not always the message that is received, as any student of communication should be fully aware, even though the statement may well be valid with regard to the person that is saying it. Masks save lives. But who? For example, if an armed bandit presents you the choice of your money or your life, only a fool would suggest that the armed bandit has your best interest in mind, but by providing you a satisfactory solution to your impending crisis. Similarly, those critical of the invisible hand theory, most popular among free market capitalists, would readily dismiss that when a shopkeeper or clerk inquires in a business establishment if he can help you, that generous offer must necessarily import some ulterior motives at cross purposes to your own self-interest. And you look like an intelligent person, so it is safe to assume that no one will ever be able to make you a fool, correct? Or not. You presently, and for an indeterminate time into the future, exist in a public health crisis, whether you wish to deny it or not. And prudence dictates that it is in your best interest as a reasonable person to collect information that will enable you to survive, as selfish as that may be. However, just as you, as a reasonable person, have a vested self-interest in survival in a pandemic health crisis, it would be a reasonable extrapolation in logic to presume not only that you are not alone in your concern for personal safety and protection, but also that others share that same self-interest, which may in fact be at cross purposes and in direct conflict with your own. And at the very beginning of the pandemic, you may well recall the selfish motives of others in the collective, although certainly not yourself, that produce certain inequities and shortages as a direct result of hoarding such items as toilet paper and hand sanitizers. And this pandemonium precipitated by a pandemic declaration is the primary concern for a person engaged in public policy. And it is this panic that is in his or her professional interest and judgment to bring under control, for what is often described amongst philosophically minded scholastics in the field of economics as a utilitarian, common, or public good. And a basic rule of politics is that if you are ever invited to a poker game and don't know who the sucker is, it is probably you. And suffice it to say, it would most certainly suck not to be a survivor in a public health crisis for you, vis-a-vis similarly situated others, of course. So don't let that sucker be you. Poker, poke me back. Would it surprise you that only a decade ago, contemplating the potential for a pandemic crisis like the present, researchers at the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, NIOSH, considered this very potential for hoarding amongst the non-essential, particularly of critical personal protective equipment, or PPE, that non-essential persons like yourself might, pursuing your personal self-interest in safety, might work to deprive an adverse impact to the public welfare of others and those engaged in the essential works of addressing the pandemic crisis, the matter at hand. Would it surprise you that was the driving rationale for conducting a robust investigation of alternatives that could be offered to non-essential persons like yourselves as a substitute? Would it impress you that, considering your personal self-interest in safety and not under pressures of a current crisis, those scientists in the Obama administration actually took the time to utilize the very same diagnostic equipment that is used to rate medical-grade protection, such as the N95, to determine if there was, in fact, a substitute to ensure your personal safety, even though you are non-essential now? Would it distress you a little to learn that under the most optimum conditions, the very same personal protection that is now being tested through an evolving science actually failed? Does that knowledge make you feel more or less confident about the rushed research, albeit by scientists, that has been produced since the onset of a public health crisis that has already claimed the lives of over 5,000 persons in Virginia, with time ticking away every moment, over half of whom are the elderly in nursing homes, a population known to be the most vulnerable from the very beginning? Are you more or less confident that a new vaccine solution rushed through production is now available to provide you safety as a non-essential person? Now, you do look like an intelligent person. Would it concern you that as late as March, even scientists at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention were developing strategies not to provide for your protection, but to prevent the hoarding of critical PPE for essential workers by non-essential persons like yourself, including recommendations to essential workers in public health to cancel elective surgeries for non-essential persons like yourself, withdraw N95s from visitor areas that had been provided before to non-essential persons like yourself. Those same measures were even instituted in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Would it concern you that Ralph Northam, the nation's only physician serving as a state governor, who chose as the state health commissioner a doctor who, it has been discovered only recently through robust litigation, had for years deliberately concealed the fact that he had graduated from an undergraduate degree conferring institution that actually did not even require a college entrance exam, did not use any of this extensive mask research and evolving science that has developed since the onset of a pandemic, when he issued a facial coverings mandate, but rather relied upon only two scientific studies on how to compel compliance for wearing facial coverings under the precautionary principle, a doctrine promoted by UNESCO and rejected in American courts. According to researchers at the Data Institute for the University of California, the primary research upon which Ralph Northam, the nation's only physician serving as a state governor, relied, another important benefit of recommending universal mask wearing would be to serve as a visible signal and reminder of the pandemic. And given the importance of ritual and solidarity in human societies, it is plausible that visible public signaling via mask wearing can potentially increase compliance with other health measures as well, such as keep distancing and hand washing. Health, especially during an epidemic, is a form of public good in that everyone else's health behaviors improve the health odds of everyone else. And that is non-rivalrous, in that one's person's health does not diminish the health of anyone else. Visible signals play an important role in human societies. As such, signaling participation in health behaviors by wearing masks, as well as visible enforcement. For example, shops asking customers to wear masks can increase compliance. Further, historically, epidemics are a time of fear, confusion, and helplessness. Mask wearing and even mask making or distribution can provide feelings of empowerment and self-efficacy, which would in turn also suggest masks could increase compliance in other health behaviors, as well as by increasing self-efficacy. Again, you look like an intelligent person. So may I inquire whether in a public health crisis that has claimed the lives of over 5,000 Virginians, it is your greatest priority to find feelings of empowerment and efficacy in wearing masks that had failed under optimum conditions, or in feeling that you are doing your duty, doing the right thing by telling others that those very same masks actually save lives. Is that really doing the right thing, or are you only following orders? Bear in mind, in courts of record, Mayor Justin Wilson and the city of Alexandria have already sworn under penalties of perjury that any deprivations that you may incur were not their fault, because, as they claim, they were not the primary force in compelling you to make the choice to do something against your personal interests or even safety. My name is Major Mike Webb, and by God, I am running for governor of Virginia. I ask every Christian, every conservative, every Republican, every Virginian, and every American true to, like the motto of the infantry, follow me, and we shall overcome. Honest.
This advertisement was authorized by Mike Webb.